In the summer of 2026, a country most people cannot find on a map walked onto the biggest stage in football and held the champions of the world to a draw. 10 islands, 500,000 people, no World Cup history at all. And it became the smallest nation ever to reach the knockout rounds. But to understand how a place this small refuses to disappear, you have to go back to an empty volcanic rock in the middle of the Atlantic that the world named green before anyone had ever lived there. There is a country the world agreed to call green. You will not find much green here. For most of the year, these islands are the color of ash, of rust, of drought, and the name has never once changed. 10 islands lie scattered across the deep Atlantic, 570 kilometers off the coast of West Africa. From above, they look like the surviving peaks of an older world that sank beneath the sea, black summits breaking an ocean that runs unbroken to the horizon in every direction. When Portuguese navigators first sighted these waters in the 15th century, they made a promise in a single word: Cabo Verde, the Green Cape. To European ears, it meant rainforests, emerald pastures, rivers heavy with fresh water. The moment you arrive, that promise breaks. Cabo Verde is no tropical Eden. It is an outpost of the Sahel, the semi-desert belt on the edge of the Sahara, set adrift in the middle of the ocean. The name was never a description. It was borrowed, wrongly, from Cape Verde, the green tip of mainland Africa, hundreds of kilometers to the east, and it has confused every arriving traveler for 5 centuries since. For weeks each year, the trade winds drag plumes of Saharan dust across the ocean until the sky turns a shade of orange no language here has bothered to name. It settles on rooftops, on leaves, on the backs of goats. It is Africa arriving by air, long after the continent itself has dropped below the horizon. And the same winds do something far larger out at sea. A few hundred kilometers west, clusters of storms rolling off Africa begin to spin and tighten. Meteorologists have a name for the ones that gather here: Cape Verde hurricanes. On average, 2 form every year, usually the biggest and longest-lived storms of the entire Atlantic season. More than half of the ocean's named storms are born in this stretch of water. The islands that cannot summon enough rain to fill their own reservoirs are the birthplace of the storms that go on to threaten a continent 4,000 kilometers away. Here, fresh water has always been the most valuable thing in existence. There is not one permanent river anywhere on the archipelago. Barely a tenth of the land can be farmed. Drought is not an occasional crisis. It is the baseline of life. And the land was as empty of creatures as it was of water. Almost every animal you meet here today, the goats, the rats, the monkeys, was carried in by people. Only one mammal ever belonged here on its own: a small, long-eared bat. Then there is the strangest fact of all. Before the 15th century, there is no evidence that a single human being ever lived here. No indigenous people, no ancient settlements, no ruins beneath the ruins. These were among the last empty places left on the planet. 10 islands with no history and no memory of their own, waiting in the middle of the ocean for someone to arrive and begin one. What happened next would build an entire nation out of that emptiness. The stone is warm before the sun reaches it. That is the first thing you notice in Cidade Velha. Heat held in walls that have been drinking Atlantic light for more than 560 years. Founded in 1462 as Ribeira Grande, this was the first permanent European city built anywhere in the tropics. not in the Americas, not in Asia. Here, on a volcanic island that sat at the exact crossroads of a new Atlantic world, ships bound between Europe, Africa, and the Americas stopped here for water and repairs. Vasco da Gama paused in these waters. So, it is said, did Columbus. For a while, this tiny town was one of the busiest crossroads on Earth, but its wealth had a source no distance can soften. The stone pillory still standing in the square marked the junction where sugar moved north, European goods moved south, and enslaved human beings moved west. Roughly 12 million people were carried across the Atlantic in chains, and many passed first through this small green valley. The cobblestones remember it differently than the history books do. The islands carry that grief in their own way. In Cape Verdean folklore, there is Pretama, a weeping woman who wanders at night, mourning children she has lost, born, the old stories say, from the oldest wound these islands hold, mothers torn forever from their own. And yet this was also where something new was forced into being. Here stands Nossa Senhora do Rosário, the oldest colonial church in the tropics. And here, enslaved Africans wove tight geometric cotton cloths called pano, so finely made that the cloth itself became a currency in West African trade. The hands bound in chains were manufacturing the money of the empire that bound them. On islands with no past, no ancestral order to inherit, old boundaries dissolved faster than almost anywhere on Earth. From the meeting of Portugal and West Africa, a Creole culture emerged, and a new language was born. Creole, not Portuguese, not any single African tongue, but a bridge invented by people learning to live together in the middle of the ocean. The mix ran deeper still. Traders, exiles, and Sephardic Jews fleeing the Inquisition all left their names on these islands, until "Where are you from?" became, for a Cabo Verdean, almost impossible to answer in a single word. The children playing football against the ruined cathedral wall did not change their game when the UNESCO sign went up. That cathedral was burned in 1585 by the English privateer Francis Drake. The raid left a wound the empire could not ignore, so on the ridge above the town, the Portuguese answered with stone. The Fortaleza Real de São Felipe, raised between 1587 and 1593 from rock carried all the way from Portugal. 4 centuries later, its bastions still stare out over the first city Europe ever built in the tropics. And different children have been playing against that same wall ever since. In Portuguese, Fogo means fire, and the island has never stopped earning the name. Pico do Fogo rises 2,829 meters straight from the ocean floor, the highest peak in the country, and one of the most active volcanoes in the Atlantic. The island does not have a volcano. The island is the volcano, and every road, farm, and home sits in its shadow. The people who farm it have their own explanation for the mountain's temper. They speak of a giant asleep beneath the rock, and say that when he turns in his sleep, the ground splits and the fire comes. After you have lived here long enough, it begins to feel as true as the geology. The last major eruption ran from late 2014 into 2015. The lava moved at walking pace, slow enough that families could stand in their doorways and choose what to carry before the rock swallowed the villages of Portela and Bangueira whole. From orbit, that black flow still cuts the valley, like a scar that will not fade. The rational choice would be to leave and never return. But inside the crater, in a place called Chá das Caldeiras, the volcanic rock breaks down into some of the most fertile soil on Earth. Within 18 months of the eruption, before the ground had fully cooled, the people came back. They rebuilt with the one material the mountain had left them, the cooled black lava, stacked by hand into the low round houses with conical roofs they call funko. For most of its history, a funko was a poor family's home, nothing more. No prize is the point here. The point is the decision to build at all, because of the volcano and not in spite of it. They replanted their vines directly into the rock that had just destroyed the last harvest. The wine they press, called manicom, carries the minerals of the ground itself, and they grow coffee on these slopes too, dark and volcanic. Ask the farmers why they refuse to abandon an active crater that has already taken everything once, and the answer comes without drama. No other soil on Earth gives back what this fire takes away. Deferred Praia, the capital, did not spread along a beach. It climbed a cliff and stopped at the edge. From the rim of the old town, the plateau, every street seems to run straight into open sky. Below the cliffs, the market opens before dawn. At 5 in the morning, the light is already orange, and the fish come straight off the wooden boats, and the air fills with fast bargaining in Creole, a language where two people from two islands might use completely different words for the same fish. Nearly a third of the whole country lives here, in a city where modern concrete rises beside pastel colonial fronts. On paper, the arithmetic is hard. The cost of living runs high, and wages are earned the hard way. Part of what keeps it moving is money sent home by family living abroad. But part of it is something you cannot put on a balance sheet. Across Praia, 2 words turn up on cafe walls, on t-shirts, in ordinary greetings. No stress. It sounds like a slogan. It is not. In a place shaped by drought and isolation, people learned long ago that you cannot argue with the weather or the sea. You can only choose how you meet them. You do not rush what cannot be rushed, and you do not let the things you cannot control steal the day you are standing in. Paired with it is a word that runs deeper, morabeza. It gets translated as hospitality, but it means something warmer, an easy openness, a sense that the stranger is owed a welcome, food, and time. It is the quiet glue of an archipelago that had every reason to grow hard under the weight of its own history, and somehow refused to. The islands were poor in almost everything except this, and they have never let it run dry. To understand Cabo Verde, you have to give up the idea of a single landscape. These 10 islands are 10 different worlds wearing one name. Take the 40-minute ferry from São Vicente to Santo Antão, and the world turns vertical. Santo Antão climbs into the clouds. Its northern coast drops 800 meters sheer into the Atlantic, and the old road cut into those cliffs, the EN1, runs with no guardrail on one side and no rock wall on the other. Just cobblestones, air, and ocean. Inland you cross a dead crater, the Cova, its floor now a green bowl of farmland, and below it, the valley of Paul runs lush with sugarcane, worked by hand and distilled into grog in stone stills. People come from all over the world to walk these ridgelines on foot, tracing ancient footpaths between villages that cling to the cliffs. One of them, Fonteinas, is little more than a cluster of pastel houses glued to a knife edge of rock above the sea, and travelers regularly call it one of the most beautiful places they have ever stood. On the highest slopes, where rain can stay away for months. Farmers harvest the air itself. The trade winds push cloud over the ridges, and as the mist catches on leaves and stone, it beads into water and drips into the soil. It is not irrigation. It is the island drinking the fog. Fly 200 kilometers east, and the land turns inside out. Sal is flat, sand pale, scoured by a wind that never rests. Inside an extinct crater lies Pedra de Lume, a salt works where white pans throw the sun back like mirrors. The crater floor is the lowest point in the country, below sea level, and rusted iron towers of a cable car built in 1921 still lean over the pans. The water is so heavy with salt that visitors float on their backs, unable to sink. A few kilometers up the coast, in a shallow bay, young lemon sharks glide through water barely knee-deep. The bay is a nursery. The big ocean hunters cannot follow them into water this thin, so they grow up here in safety, a few feet from anyone willing to wade out. And on the north coast, the ocean has carved a lava tube called Buracona, where for a few minutes each midday, a shaft of sunlight strikes a hidden pool and lights it electric blue. The islanders call it the Blue Eye. Further east lies Boa Vista, where the same winds that carry Saharan dust have dropped real desert dunes onto the edge of the Atlantic. Stand on the 11-kilometer sweep of Santa Monica Beach, and there is nothing but gold sand and silence. Then, after dark, the silence moves. Cabo Verde holds one of the largest nesting populations of endangered loggerhead turtles on Earth, over 200,000 nests in recent record years. They return to the exact beaches their ancestors used long before any human lived here, sharing the sand with animals found nowhere else. The leaf-toed gecko, the swift that carries this archipelago's name, and the Rosso lark, one of the rarest birds on Earth, its entire species clinging to a single uninhabited islet. And these are only 3 of the 10. Others, like green São Nicolau and quiet Mayo, keep their own accents and their own weather. And one, Santa Luzia, has no one living on it at all. In Creole, there is a word that refuses to cross into English: Saudade. People reach for longing, nostalgia, homesickness, and none are heavy enough. Saudade is the specific ache of the Atlantic crossing, the grief of watching a ship shrink over the horizon, and the grief of the person on that deck watching the island do the same. Both shores carry it. That weight found its purest form in Morna, the national music of Cabo Verde, slow and aching, carried on guitar and cavaquinho and violin. UNESCO named it Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. It was born and refined in Mindelo, the port town on São Vicente that has always been the country's cultural heart. And it was Mindelo that gave the world Cesária Évora. She sang for 30 years in small bars and on street corners before the world outside noticed her voice. She was already middle-aged when fame found her, and when she finally reached the great stages, from the Olympia in Paris to Carnegie Hall, she walked out every time barefoot, a quiet act of solidarity with the working poor of her islands who could not afford shoes. She sang entirely in Creole to rooms full of people who did not understand a single word, and they wept anyway. Honesty in music needs no translation. They called her the Barefoot Diva, and by the end, she had sold millions of records and won the world's highest musical old woman from a poor island, carrying its name onto every continent. When she died in 2011, the nation declared days of mourning. Today, a statue of her sits in Mindelo, barefoot, looking out at the harbor. The ferries still leave. The water still has to be crossed. And her voice is still the sound this archipelago makes when it thinks about leaving and about coming home. If you think this is only a country of sorrow and slow songs, you have read half the story. Under the melancholy of Morna runs a second current, fast, urgent, and defiant. It is called Funaná. Born in the rural interior of Santiago, Funaná is driven by the breathing pulse of the accordion, the gaita, and the hard metallic scrape of an iron bar, the farinho. It is music for sweat and celebration, and under colonial rule, the authorities saw it as dangerous, too rooted and too free, and tried to suppress it. Today, that once forbidden beat fills every square and every late-night festival on the islands. Beside it runs batuque, older still, a call-and-response rhythm played by women in a circle, beating patterns on bundles of cloth held between their knees. Its lyrics sharp, funny, and quietly critical, the sound of a community holding itself together. The same instinct, turning almost nothing into something rich, sits at the center of the national dish. Cachupa is not fast food. It is a philosophy simmered for hours. Hominy corn, beans, root vegetables, and whatever fish or meat the day provides. In an archipelago where food was never guaranteed, it taught people how to stretch a harvest, a dish born of scarcity that came to mean abundance. And it does not end at dinner. The next morning, the leftovers are fried up into cachupa refogada, crowned with a fried egg and washed down with grog, the fierce sugarcane spirit of these islands. To eat in a Cabo Verdean home is to taste a people who learned to make a feast out of whatever the world handed them. The grief of Morna and the joy of Funaná are not opposites here. They are two hands of the same body, and these islands have always needed both to hold themselves up. To see how these islands actually survive, go to Brava, the smallest inhabited island, tucked into the southwest corner of the chain. Brava has no airport. You reach it only by ferry across a channel that can turn merciless. 500 meters up, wrapped in mist, the flower-filled town of Nova Sintra sits inside a green cloud forest that exists almost nowhere else in this dry country. Walk its stone lanes past the two-story colonial houses, the sobrados, and you can read an old social order in the stone itself. Tall windows and balconies on the upper floors for the landowners. Low, windowless rooms beneath for the people who worked the land. And you notice the silence. Hibiscus spills over the walls of houses that stand completely empty. In the 19th century, American whaling ships out of New England recruited their crews here, and hundreds of Bravan men crossed the Atlantic to settle in New Bedford, Providence, and Brockton. Some of those New England sailors never fully left the bloodline either. Even now, it is not rare in these misted villages to meet someone with deep West African skin and pale green or gray eyes. Over a century and a half, this one island poured itself into America. Today, the Bravan American community in Massachusetts is larger than the population of Brava itself. And that is the real shape of the whole nation. More Cabo Verdeans live outside the country than inside it. Around 500,000 live on the islands, and the diaspora, spread across Portugal, the United States, France, and the Netherlands, is larger still. But leaving has never meant letting go. The money sent home every month accounts for well over 12% of the national economy, an invisible cord stretched across the ocean. And the connection is more than money. Cape Verdeans abroad keep their citizenship and their vote, and the diaspora elects its own representatives to the national parliament. The people who left hold seats in the very room where the country decides its future. They come back too, to bury parents, to marry, to build a house with foreign savings, to show grandchildren the island that lives inside the old songs. The shuttered houses of Nova Sintra are not abandoned. They are waiting. That refusal to let go, more than any harbor or harvest, is what keeps these islands alive. That bond between the islands and their scattered children stepped onto a world stage in early 2024. At the Africa Cup of Nations, Cabo Verde arrived as one of the smallest nations in the draw, in a group with giants, and the team they call the Blue Sharks topped it unbeaten and marched to the quarterfinals. The best run in the nation's history. It felt like a ceiling. It turned out to be a floor. In October 2025, Cabo Verde beat Eswatini 3-0 and qualified for the FIFA World Cup for the first time ever, becoming the smallest country by land area ever to reach the biggest stage in sport. No one gave them a chance. In their opening match, they held Spain, champions of the world in 2010, to a goalless draw. Days later, they came from behind to draw 2-2 with Uruguay, and Kevin Pina scored the first World Cup goal in the country's history. A 0-0 draw with Saudi Arabia was enough to finish second in the group and walk into the knockout rounds, the smallest country ever to do it. Their run ended in Miami against Argentina, the reigning champions, 3-2, a defeat that could have gone either way. They lost the match and won something harder to measure. In the stands, a woman with the flag painted on her face held up a sign, "Small Islands, Big Dreams." Many of those players were born in Rotterdam, Lisbon, Dublin, Paris, sons of the diaspora who learned Creole at kitchen tables in European cities. When they lined up to sing the anthem, many of them wept. They had grown up thousands of miles away, and the jersey belonged to them completely. The triumphs reach beyond the pitch. In 2024, the World Health Organization certified Cabo Verde malaria-free after decades of patient work, and life expectancy now sits above 76 years. But this democracy was never handed over. On the north of Santiago stands a place its prisoners called the Camp of Slow Death, Tarrafal, a prison camp built in 1936 by Portugal's dictatorship to break its enemies, and later its anti-colonial fighters from Cabo Verde, Angola, and Guinea-Bissau. At its center stood a windowless concrete box the prisoners named the Frigidaire, the frying pan, where the daytime heat climbed past 50 degrees. Around 30 men died in that one cell. The camp closed for good only in 1974, a week after the dictatorship fell, and today its cell blocks are a museum of resistance. This is a country that only won its independence in 1975, led out of empire in part by Amilcar Cabral, a son of these islands assassinated 2 years before the freedom he fought for arrived. In the half-century since, it has stayed peaceful, democratic, and free. Its stability is not luck, it is memory, turned into institutions and defended. Come back to the harbor as the day ends. The light arrives from the west, the direction it has always arrived from, and for about 12 minutes, the Atlantic turns a color no language spoken here has named. The old walls soak it up, the water hands it back. Cabo Verde in this century is no longer only a story of surviving drought and distance. It is a story of turning them into something. The same forces that once made life almost impossible, the relentless wind, the hard sun, the surrounding sea, are now being put to work. Wind turbines turn on the ridges, solar arrays spread across ground that could grow little else, and desalination plants pull drinking water straight out of the sea, as the country pushes to draw half its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. The islands the world once forgot now draw more than 1 million visitors a year, more than twice the number of people who live here. The place that emptied out for centuries because it could not feed its own is now, for a few nights at a time, more crowded with strangers than with its own. On 10 islands where no one lived before the age of exploration, a society was assembled out of trade winds, the pain of leaving, and the warmth of arrival. They took a volcanic rock in the middle of the sea, named it green before it ever was, and through nothing but stubbornness, made it a home worth collapsing an ocean to return to. The ocean is still moving below the cliffs. The wind is still coming off the Sahara, and in the morning, the stone will still be warm. That is Cabo Verde, not dots on a map. A triumph of the human refusal to disappear. So here is the question worth sitting with. If you had washed up on these islands 5 centuries ago, with no ancestors here and no history to stand on, nothing but bare volcanic rock and the sea in every direction, what would you have built? Tell us in the comments. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, the places the map keeps underestimating, subscribe and stay close. There are more of them out there, and we are already on our way to the next one.